For those who don't know her already, Cathy Green is, as Heather said, our executive director and president of the National Maritime Historical Society. And other than being a pencil pusher and admin boss kind of lady, she does have a very broad background in maritime heritage, of which a huge part of that has been her experience as a professional maritime archaeologist. Uh, I met Cathy at East Carolina University in a program that was specific master's program for maritime history and maritime archaeology. In that, since that time, Cathy has done field work in warm, crystal clear waters off Hawaii, Caribbean, freezing cold waters in Maine, freezing cold waters in the Great Lakes, different times of the year. There have been currents, wave action, sharks, fish that bite, but until this past summer, I don't believe she'd ever done maritime archaeology in a war zone. But off she went, and rather than me tell you what she did, I'll let her tell you herself. But thank you for joining us, and looking forward to hearing more about what her expedition was about and what it will mean going forward. Cathy, all you.
Thanks, Dee. So this is a project that we played a small piece in, but was an international effort. This took place this last August in Ukraine, and this came about as a collaboration through the International Congress of Maritime Museums, whose president I see is here with us tonight, Kristen Greenaway, who's also the president of the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum. I've been involved with this group for a number of years on their archaeology committee. And in earlier in 2024, there was our biannual Congress in Amsterdam. And there was a presentation there by a Ukrainian archaeologist that was very compelling. And Dr. Fred Hocker, who had worked with Dr. Kobalia before, put together an idea that an international team could assist the Ukrainians on a project that was very timely and an important piece of their history. So at that Congress, this idea came together. And as soon as this was announced that this was something that was going to take place, I approached Dr. Hocker and said, how can I be a part of this? And several other people joined on. And so the planning began for the expedition. So this is obvious, hopefully to most of you all, where we were working. I'll talk about the where, I'll talk about the what, and then I'll talk about the why this is important. First, where we are. Ukraine, which as everyone knows, has been the center of a lot of worldwide attention because of the conflict and the invasion of Russia. To enter Ukraine these days is not an easy process. The airspace isn't open, so we flew into Poland and then took multiple modes of transportation from the Polish border across Ukraine all the way to Zaporizhia. You'll see there on the Dnipro River, which is fairly far east. It was a 16-hour overnight train ride to get from Lviv in the west over to Zaporizhia. And it's also quite far south, which is a key piece of the logistics of the nature of the work we had to do. So you'll see here from this map that Zaporizhia Oblast, that's like the state or the county, the region, is there in the central south area of Ukraine. And the graphic here was taken from September. So the pink areas are Russian-held areas. And so we were just north of that pink area. We were about 30 kilometers north of that stable line, which runs along the south bank of the Dnipro River, right in the middle of the screen. If you can see my cursor, there's the border there. This is the Dnipro, and we're up around here. Now, this whole area of the Dnipro River, the reason we were there at this time and that this was an emergency excavation was that uh, this area of the Dnipro since the 1960s, 1950s really, had been dammed and turned into basically a 300 kilometer long lake. So from Zaporizhzhia in the north to, uh, let's see, the Kharkova Dam in the south, the Dnipro River flooded an area called the Great Meadow, which was an area of a lot of cultural significance, but also a lot of ecological diversity as well. Forest, swamps, wetlands, reeds, things like that. Um, and so this area had been a recreational area. It had been used for its natural resources as well. In 2023, oh, quick, before I mention that, so there's a series of dams. So this is where we were up north in Zaporizhzhia, and the Dnipro River, which is straddled by a hydroelectric dam, huge Soviet-built dam that provides electricity. But again, this area of the Dnipro River is this area right here is a division between an upper and lower level. So there are a lot of rapids, a lot of rocks, and it wasn't navigable for a long time. So the dam not only provided the hydroelectric power, but created waterways that could basically, you could navigate from the Black Sea all the way up to Kiev. So this is the Zaporizhzhia Dam. This is another view. We were working just south of this. So we were on this lower side of the Zaporizhzhia Dam. The southern dam that was the other book into this lake, to this 300-mile stretch of the Great Meadow, was the Kharkova Dam. And that was bombed in June of 2023. It was destroyed by Russian forces trying to prevent Ukrainian forces to outflank them. And it drained that lake. Now, you can imagine the kind of damage this caused by such a dramatic and quick outflow of uh, all this water. And one of the results from that was a significant drop in the water levels within those two areas. So between 6 and 12 meters in between the two dams was lowered. So what that means is a lot of those areas that had been covered by water for decades was now exposed. And that meant hundreds, if not thousands of archaeological sites were now exposed as well. So again, just providing a little context of where we were at the top of this map, you can see the dam and the hydroelectric station, and right in the middle of the river, Khortytsia Island. So Khortytsia is a national reserve and has been, I believe, since the 1990s. And it is an area of both ecological, cultural, and just recreation. So there's a museum on the island, there's a rebuilt Cossack village on the island, there's a conservation facility, which was key for us in this project, as well as, lots of beaches and stables and things like that. It's located right across from the city of Zaporizhzhia, which is an industrial city. And you access it through a series of bridges across the river. Hopefully you can see my cursor here along the western edge of the island. This is what they call the old channel over here. This is where our project was on this western side of the island. It's the slower moving, uh, more narrow of the channels. And it is an area of a lot of recreation even now. So the beach that we were on was surrounded by beaches with people picnicking, fishing, swimming. Um, it's an active area, and it's a very beautiful area as well. And this is what it looks like. So this is standing on the beach we were working on and looking across the river. You can see these large rock outcroppings, Numova rocks, which are on both sides of the river. When the next picture you'll see swiveling around, you'll be able to see it on both sides. But you can see the beaches, the little alcoves and beaches where people are swimming and gathering. So this video, just to let you know, so this is a very this is a very large video. We had a documentary team with us, and they were gathering really high quality videos. So this may be jumpy for you, um, but hopefully it's not too distracting. I'm just talking over this so I can tell you about, now you know the where, tell you about the what we were looking at, what we were there to do. And I don't think I'm spoiling the big reveal. This is one of the vessels we are working on, the main one we were working on from the 18th century. Um, I don't think it's spoiling the big reveal because it's not a, a dramatic, intact vessel. It's part of a troop transport from the 1730s. But it's a piece of a larger piece of history. You can see right here, just to give you a little context, the site we're working on is on this small beach area that you had to climb over rocks on one end or down a cliff to get down to. If you look over to the right in the water, if you can make it out, we have pieces of the wreck we had already removed in the river right there in a holding pen. And in just a second, when I describe the environment a little more, it'll become clear why we had to remove pieces as quickly as possible. It's a very dry environment. Um, and you can see we're hemmed in by these rocks. But here's where I wanted to just mention a little bit about the history of what we're looking at. Uh, this area along the Dnipro River and Ukraine was a, a conflict area for centuries. We were looking at an 18th century site, but we had to dig through a 1943 battlefield to get to this. And of course, um, we had a current battle going on overhead. Some days literally with fighter jets flying low over the river on the rocks right where we were using the river and the rocks as navigation and cover to head just south of where we were to bomb Russian positions. These were all Ukrainian fighter jets going over the site where we were working. So again, the conflict that this vessel was a part of was the Russo-Russian Ottoman conflict over Crimea, control of Crimea in the 1730s. So over a series of years from 1735 to 1739, there was regular conflict between Russian forces, Turkish forces, and even Austrian forces for part of that. And the general means of attack, if you think back to the map we were looking at before, Crimea is directly south of where we were. The Dnipro River runs north to south. and empties into the Black Sea. So the Russians would, here we go, here's a nice scene looking up back towards Zaporizhzhia. This is looking north up that western channel of the Dnipro River. So the forces would come down pretty much from this area up on the top of the cliffs there where you see those paths. That was the winter camp for the Russian forces. They would go down in the spring to the Crimea and using a fleet of about 300 to 400 vessels to transport themselves, horses, weaponry, supplies down, and then retreat back to this location in the fall. The top of the cliffs being the winter camp. Now you'll see here it looks burned out, and indeed it is. Just a few weeks before we got there, there was a wildfire that cleared this whole area at the top of the cliffs. This is, as I mentioned, this is a very dry environment, and it was particularly dry this past summer. And so there were a whole series of wildfires on Khortytsia Island. Some of them were, from an errant cigarette butt, lightning strikes, but also from missiles, drones, things like that. So you see whole swaths of the island that had the wildfires while we were there. I'll just go to the next one here. Hang on just a second. There we go. So as part of this conflict and retreating back to winter quarters in the winter of 1738, the plague struck the camp. And so the Russian forces that were there were forced to retreat further upriver and abandon that winter campsite. The vessels that were there, probably as many as 300 vessels were abandoned. They were stripped or maybe partially disassembled where they had to, but abandoned pretty quickly. And when we look at the site and we look at the artifacts and the disposition of things, you can see that haste as people were, as the Russian troops were fleeing upriver. The remains of these vessels were reported for decades after that. Mennonite settlers who came into the area in the 1780s reported seeing skeletons of hundreds of vessels still along the banks. Some of them have been pulled up on shore. Many were just moored and kind of sunk where they were. Now, what kind of vessels were these? And we were helped in interpretation of the vessels we were working on by the fact that several had been excavated years before. So since the 1970s, archaeologists from Ukraine, Zaporizhzhia, and Khortytsia Island have been looking at these vessels. It wasn't unknown that there was a fleet of ships there. In fact, there were several that were excavated back in the 1990s and conserved, and they're displayed in this location on southern Khortytsia Island. Now, the south part of the island is close enough to the front lines that it is closed, completely closed to visitation at the moment. But we were able to get down there and take a look at the vessels that are there. And you can see here, not only have, the timber's been conserved, but they have really nicely constructed cradles that show the shape of the hull. This is similar to one of the vessels we were working on. Again, if you're in the hangar, there were 3 or 4 different, actually 4 vessels, 2 of which that were kind of put together into one example of the transports, sailing vessels, and vessels that would carry both people and horses up and down the river. And you can see the vessels have different shapes for different purposes. Here's a really lovely line drawing that Dr. Kobalya did as part of the earlier excavations. And again, very helpful to study not only the hulls, but the fasteners and the construction of these vessels before we got into the excavation that we were working on. Now, before we go out to the site itself, certainly a component of um, the project was the fact that we were in an active war zone. It influenced, how we could work, when we could work, who could be a part of the project, and the haste in which we had to move. So I'm sharing just a couple pictures from Zaporizhzhia. This is City Hall here, and you can see over here to the right all of the statues, monuments, public displays, things like that are all uh, you know protected from attacks. This is the main street in Zaporizhzhia, uh, a gallery of heroes of lost soldiers from from that area. And this was just a screenshot off of my phone of um, every day. So everybody there has a app on their phone that shows that um, shows error alerts, and it was a constant when we were there. And between, I'd say, 3 times a day to a dozen times a day. And before I traveled there, um, you wondered why people were would be out and about when air raids were going on, and it's because you would never go out if you waited for the air raids not to be going on. It's a daily and constant reality for everybody there, and depending who you are, you know, um, and what you need to do. You have to go out and do your work as much as you need to do, and that's what we did. We were mindful of what was happening. Certainly, in the at night was the most active, and so we were working, in the middle of the day. But this was a daily reality, not only for us, but all over the country. And this is just an example. One day on the way to the site, driving over one of the bridges, this was a missile attack that hit just a few miles north of us in a neighborhood. Um, Sometimes infrastructure may be the target, but oftentimes it was not. It was kind of that constant terror where you never knew something was um, going to land. So this was our international team, going from left to right. Dr. Larry Bavitz from East Carolina University, professor there. He's actually one of Deirdre and I's professors when we were there. And then John Fosher, who was a Texas A&M archaeologist, and then myself from East Carolina. And then Dr. Dima Kabalia, who was the head of this project, who's there at Khortytsia Island in Ukraine. And then on the right is Dr. Fred Hawker, who is with the Vasa Museum in Sweden. Dr. Hawker is also the head of the archaeology committee with ICMM and uh, helped put the project together. This is our larger team with the core of the Ukrainian team along with us. And they had been there for weeks before and would be there weeks after. We also had a whole host of other people coming in and out throughout the 3 weeks that we were there helping. We had media most every day, local media, international media. Um, it was a project that I think brought some hope and some, kind of togetherness to the archaeology community and the history community in Ukraine. So why were we there? What were we doing? I told you about the dams and the lowering of the water levels. This is what was happening when the Dnipro returned to original banks. Uh, one of the vessels started eroding out. Now, and thanks to Dr. Kapalia, who lent some of these slides that show some of the earlier work and some of the work that continued after we were gone. Um, this is how one of the vessels had been protected since 2023. But again, with the annual spring flooding, they knew that this was going to be undercut. And this is why we needed to do this project when we did. You saw this in the video, but this static image here shows clearly the three vessels or the three different objects that we were working on. And each one was different and needed a different approach to how we were documenting and protecting it. So if I start on the left, you'll see there's a triangle sticking out into the river. That is a cofferdam that was built around one of the vessels that was just on that shoreline. It was buried fairly deep, and so by providing that protection with that cofferdam, so the current of the river wouldn't undercut it, that was the best way to preserve that. Over on the right, this is the one we focused on in the drone footage, and that we spent our time on. And this was going to need to be completely excavated. It was far enough out and was going to continue to be exposed that the only way to save that was to excavate. In the middle, there's kind of an oval area here. Was a whole collection um, of timbers and pieces and parts of boats that was in this area too. And when we get around to the specifics of the site, we excavated the site, documented those, and then reburied them. They were deep enough that we felt that they would be protected in place. Now, we knew going into this that there were things all over the beach. Ground penetrating radar early that year revealed that this whole area, those hundreds of vessels are lying below the sediment all along here. So um, we were just dealing with the vessels that were most in danger. This is a photograph and some photogrammetry of object one, the one that is protected by the cofferdam, which you see right here, once it was completed. Most of that work was, some of it was done concurrent to when we were there in August, but was finished up later in this fall. Now, this isn't a permanent solution, but certainly during wartime, this is is the kind of protection that, oops, that we could do. All right. And the second site, this is the bow section of what's called a double chaloupe. And if we're looking at it to the left is north, that's the bow, the stern heading over to the right. You can see from the image here, and you'll be able to see this from when we move to some of the other images. We had to dig down along that back wall to expose that starboard side of the vessel. So here's a few images of that starboard exterior bow coming out of the sand. Now, as an underwater archaeologist, this was new for me. I'm used to working underwater. So this was a totally different skill set that we're working with. You don't have to worry about dive equipment, limited time underwater. what you have to the the main skill is shoveling sand, which is has its own challenges, but it's very satisfying in being able to see a vessel emerge out of the sediment. And let me go back here one. Um, something that you also don't see underwater very often is stratigraphy. You can see the layers of sand and clay. And when we got down farther, part of the vessel was burned. We could see the char, which was really interesting. And so all that stratigraphy was documented along with the vessel itself. So here's that starboard side emerging out. So eventually we had it completely uncovered there, and you can see that nice kind of flared shape of the hull as it goes back. As I mentioned, so these vessels were abandoned, and when they were, uh, the Russians didn't want to leave vessels that could be repurposed against them to the Turks. So they disassembled, burned, or stripped as much as they could the vessels on their way out. So you can see the charring on the frames here. Also look down to the left. You can see fasteners. There were iron fasteners all over the site. So not only were we excavating the vessel, but there was a lot of material underneath. And so this is that same site, but looking from the other way. So now we're to the port and looking back at the interior of the vessel. So here's Dr. Babbitt's uh, at 80 plus years old. I don't think he'd be uh, uh, upset that I mentioned that, was out there shoveling sand with the best of us. And so here's this interior section as it emerges. And again, slowly but surely over the course of 3 weeks, we completely excavated the site. And as we did so, were disassembling pieces of it. It did not have enough structural integrity that we could leave it completely intact. So, especially that port side, which had kind of fallen away, uh, we had to document very carefully, and we measured, we took pictures, we did photogrammetry, we labeled every piece so it can be reassembled. That is the intention. And I mentioned the integrity of the vessel, so you could still see the construction, right? You have the keel was there, you had the frames that were there, you had that exterior planking, but it really was oops, not in the best of shape, and uh, things got worse pretty quickly. So it was such, it was so dry, nearly a desert environment that you had to constantly spray the wreck with water so it wouldn't dry out. Uh, Waterlogged wood, um, you need to keep it wet, right? So the fact that this vessel was eroding out of the bank, it wasn't just that it would be swept away, it would be that it was exposed and that would have it deteriorate pretty quickly. So we worked as quickly as possible. We kept the vessel as wet as possible, but you can see how the timbers were drying out very quickly. So here's the excavated vessel, site 2. Oops, sorry about that. Just some different views of that. When you get your next issue of Sea History in the next few weeks, you'll recognize this on the cover. But I promised Dee I wouldn't show that here. And here's bow looking stern. And you can see the beach behind us and all the guys fishing over there. So we had a lot of we had a lot of we had an active audience the whole time we were there, interested in what was happening. And the last step, of course, was to undercut the vessel to be able to take out the larger pieces that were intact. While we were there, we took out probably about a quarter size of this piece right here out. But then the part um, under the tarp above was removed after our team left, but I have some footage of that too. Just a quick note about the area in between the two intact vessels. Um, Again, we there were some timbers sticking out, and we knew there were pieces there. So, shoveling sand, we went. I think we figured about 20 tons by the time it was all over. And you could see Olena there spraying the timbers as that was excavated. Lots of digging. And the collection of timbers here are probably part of a different vessel than any of the two that we were looking at, maybe even two different vessels. And there were quite a few interesting artifacts in this assemblage as well, including this boat hook here at the bottom. And I wanted to pull out some of the artifact pictures because there were some really interesting pieces here. Um, some of the rigging, block and tackle, lifting gear, but there was also some rope you can see kind of running through the middle as well, cable or rope as well, probably hemp. Some iron fastenings. And this is part of the windlass mount right here. The windlass, a piece of equipment for lifting anchors and other heavy components on the boat. So we do have actually, and this is interesting, we do have construction details and actually some paint. You can see here some of that red paint. There are a few timbers that had that was still extant on there. So the dead eye, and you can see again, see the cordage still around that. All of these pieces will be conserved. So there's a conservation facility um, very nearby on the island. So these were cataloged, packaged up, and taken over to that conservation facility. The larger pieces, we'll see in just in a minute how those were transported. Here's the head of a ship's mallet. These were interesting. So this was a musket here on the top. You can see how corroded that is. And then a bayonet on the bottom. Now, these were all from the time period of the vessel, but we found plenty of World War II era artifacts as well. All kinds of shells. We had a whole magazine at one point, and parts of disconcertingly what we thought might have been some grenades. Um, so again, we're excavating battlefield upon battlefield. You can see here where some of that um, rope, it was under a lot of it was underneath the vessel. So if you can imagine, these vessels were hauled up on shore, people throwing things overboard or trying to strip things out and get them outside of the vessel, or maybe it tipped over. But a lot of the material culture was found underneath, and you can see some of um, the shot as well. And this one was interesting. So thought this was a bowl at first, but it's a mortar, right? So a tin mortar. So part of um, some of the ordnance that would have been on board. Some copper and bronze items as well, buttons, buckles, parts of uniforms. This one was we call this the bow roller. Um, it was a sheave that would have been used for raising and lowering the anchor. And this is how our international team left the vessel, kind of half excavated here. The lower half is gone, but that that top part is still there because it was still intact in one piece. So in the following weeks, the Ukrainian team uh, uh, made a cradle, and the beach, you couldn't get equipment onto the beach. You couldn't get any mechanical equipment on the beach. So this all needed to be done by hand. So once the vessel was cradled, we'll see if we can get this video to work here. Again, it might be a little jumpy, but hopefully you'll get the gist of it. Uh, there's so the idea is to get the vessel into the river where it can remain wet and then be towed up around the corner to the conservation facility. And it's just taking brute strength to get it in there. Um, Let me move this along here so you can see it all. Oop, hang on, go back a little bit. Okay, the dramatic. And you can see Paulina, who just ran around there. She was the head conservator on board, so she's kind of uh, keeping track of all this. There it goes, very dramatic into the river. And again, towed up around the corner, and this is currently undergoing conservation. And there was other documentation going on. I mentioned that there was local media there throughout the project, but we also had a film crew from Nova. Blink Films was working through Nova to film us through the whole time. So we're looking forward to that documentary coming together in the coming months. No word on when that would be coming out, but we'll certainly keep you updated in the pages of Sea History and at on our website. So Ben Holgate here in the middle was he was a one-man film crew, absolutely extraordinary guy, toting about 6 persons worth of film gear into the middle of Ukraine and with us all week. So that's our team. And I'll pull that out. And I let me just pull up the chat here. Um, that was that was our project. Um, it's something that we hope will be ongoing. Certainly, the conservation is. There's lots of other vessels all over the beach. So, the story it continues, and hopefully, once things settle down, more work can go on over there. Things did get a little dicier as we were there. So by the time we left at the end of August, uh, drone attacks had um, really had an uptick, and they continue to do so now. Almost every night, we were hearing the anti-aircraft guns and drones. As we got on our train to leave, the afternoon train to leave, um, we the tracks were being hit behind us. So if we hadn't gotten out that afternoon, we would have been there for a while. It continues to be a pretty fraught place. If you're watching the news, Zaporizhzhia is one of the places that is targeted quite a bit. One thing I will say here at the as I wrap up, this was uh, of the 25 years I've been doing this is probably the most impactful project I've been on. Not because the wreck was so outstanding that it just was that was the thing. It was the team that was there, and those of us who came in for a few weeks. Um, it's nothing compared to what everybody who's there working on this day after day in these conditions because this is an important part of their heritage. And it's uh, get a little emotional. It's not a small thing. It's not a small thing that they're doing. Um, and I feel very honored to be a part of it. National Maritime Historical Society. Again, I think this is work we could and should be doing. The International Congress of Maritime Museums, who really was the driving force to make this happen, along with the museum group in Sweden. Um, this is it's important to show our support for such critical work. So with that, I know we do have some questions. Um, let me see in the chat here. I don't know if anybody put anything in. There were a couple of questions that were submitted in advance. That if I can pull uh, my sheet up here. One question was there Navy support to this project? And no, this was Khortytsia Island National Reserve that was driving this. The regional government certainly was supportive. They helped us with security throughout the project. The mayor of Zaporizhia um, uh, came out to the project. I mean, there was local and regional support, but not direct military support for this project. Other questions? Dee, I don't know if anything else came in.
I am not seeing any on the chat
Okay,
feature.
okay.
So
The
I'm gonna.
other, hang on here, let me pull up. I know I had at least one more. Um, Kristen, thanks for sending in a question. Kristen Greenaway with ICMM. Um, her question was the most important takeaway that I came home with from my experience in Ukraine. Um, it's that last piece, the getting to know um, uh, the getting to know people there and getting to work with the our international team that came in. Um, it's when you get into a situation like that, I don't have a lot of skills that would be applicable in a war zone. This happens to be the kind of quirky, interesting one I do, and I'm glad I could take part in that. So I guess if there's a takeaway, um, you know, it is doing even if you think it's a small thing, being engaged and important events is something that you know it, you should do. If it's even in the smallest of ways. Um, Here's another
I have a
question.
question, Kathy.
What's that? Go ahead.
I have a question.
Sure.
So these are Russian transport vessels, correct?
Correct.
So is the feeling that the Russians, it, the sites were exposed because the dam was blown up and the water washed out? Is the feeling that the Russian attacks that these sites are potentially being destroyed just by that action in itself if someone doesn't go in to excavate them, document them? Is that part of the Russian goals? Is that the feeling behind that, or is it just coincidental that these are in the path of this river and the dam, and that was all getting blown up? And if it's determined or thought that the Russians are trying to destroy this history, it is also their own history, correct?
Correct. Yeah, and this, that's it's such a complicated issue, right? Because this territory has all different. It's a melting pot of all different kind of cultures, and the dam wasn't blown up to threaten someone's cultural heritage. However, What has been shown time and time again throughout this conflict in occupied areas is that trying to erase unique Ukrainian cultural heritage, any chapter of it, is something that the Russians have been doing. So going into museums and stealing things, destroying things, and raids targeting cultural sites is something that certainly happens. It's a demoralizing thing, and again, it's trying to erase Ukrainianness. And even though, as you point out, um, even when you know that history is wrapped up in Russian history as well, um, these vessels were built in Ukraine, and it's part of their story. So that's part of the thread as well. At the museum on Khortytsia Island, the collections that could be moved were removed. The vessels obviously are too large to do so. So that's why the documentation was so important. Couple questions I can see here. How long? Our group was there. A couple of us were there for 3 weeks. The other parts of the international team were there for 4, I believe. And then the rest of the Ukrainian team were there, for good portions of the summer, coming in and out for different pieces of the excavation. Um, let's see, the the Nova documentary. Uh, that's, to be determined. They're in production now, but we'll be sure to let folks know when that's out. Certainly, in no time in the imminent future. A question about if air raids ever interrupted our work. If by interrupted, did they happen every day? Did we stop? No, I can't recall any time that we stopped. If you heard the jets going over, or you heard um, the anti-aircraft guns in the distance, you just kind of paused on your shovel, looked up, and went back to work, which was, in itself kind of a shocking thing. But you just kind of got used to it. It was more in the evenings that things were felt a little more imminently threatening, I guess we'll say. Anything else
You have a
to...
comment from Dima's son, Kathy.
Oh, thank you so much, Ruslana. Your dad, Dima Kabalia, who is probably one of the most extraordinary people I've ever met. Um, he's a wonderful guy, and led this team um, in a way that was both commanding and quiet at the same time. And your grandfather was there as well, shoveling more sand than all of us. Um, Thank you so much for joining us. Are there other plans for future work along sites on the river? Yeah, absolutely. But that kind of depends on the security situation um, with the war. One thing that I'll end on here is that uh, one of the kind of uh, things that came out of this project, or that was demonstrated with this project, is the need to have a whole lot of archaeologists um, to be able to document all of the archaeological sites that are now exposed in that Great Meadow area. Um, when that area was flooded, back in the 1950s, there weren't comprehensive um, uh, documentation efforts of those sites. So there's Scythian sites, medieval sites, you know, 18th century sites and all the way up until the 1950s that were covered that are now exposed. So there needs to be a whole generation of archaeologists trained in kind of how to do work in these riverine environments. So that's something that the Ukrainians are really interested in establishing there in this area is a training center for archaeologists in Ukraine and then for international partners to help with that. So that's something that I hope that ICMM and National Maritime Historical Society can continue to be involved in helping Ukrainians be able to document that all those sites. All right. I thank you all for joining us this evening. We do have our first Thursday program for January locked in. That'll be on Thursday, January 8th at 7 p.m. Eastern, where we're going to be welcoming Alex Granwall, who's the program director of the Maritime Washington National Heritage Area. That's Washington State, who will share how she works to preserve and connect Washington's coastal stories, and why the region's people and places make it an exciting destination for you to visit, which is especially timely because we have our first National Maritime Historical Society Puget Sound cruise with American Cruise Lines. We have one cabin left. This is a cruise that's going to be taking place at the end of March. You can find out about it on our website, seahistory.org, to be able to join a group of us on a maritime heritage cruise. It's not just going to be your regular old trip around on a beautiful American cruise line ship. We have experts on board that are going to be talking about the maritime heritage of the area, and then also special side trips at the different ports to maritime heritage areas. So please join us in January to find more about that and check our website for details on the trip. So thank you all for joining us this evening, and happy holidays. Good night.